So, very good morning to all of those who are here this morning live on Zoom, and to those of you joining on YouTube, then good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And a very, very warm welcome. This is the third of six teachings, a very brief look at Prajnaparamita in a larger context of in 2023 we started all six paramitas, so this is the final one. So we start today with our usual very, very special moment when we gather ourselves and remember our bodhicitta and try and feel very authentic, very sincere, loving care for all of our fellow beings, every conscious living being in this world, in other worlds. And we remind ourselves of our wish, our duty, our longing to be more and more useful for everyone through making our hearts and minds purer and wiser, clearer, more peaceful, more stable and harmonious. And we do some prayers. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through the practice of generosity and all six transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well. May they live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for those good things to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating the causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being, totally beyond suffering, and attain the great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Dayanta Shame Shamavati Shamata Shadru Om Kuri Mam Kuri Marajite Karota Keori Tajuwati Oloyane Bishuda Nimale Malapanaye Kukure Kaka Grase Grasana Omuki Paramuki Amuki Shamedavane Savagraha Bandhanane Nigri Hitva Savabhava Pravadina Vimukta Mara Pasha Savidva Buddha Mudra Anukatita Savamare Butsarita Parishuddhe Bigashantu Savamara Kama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body and speech and mind flow from you, and we are one. So today is our third session, And we will return to Gampopa's wonderful journey through this topic of Prajnaparamita. A few things I'd like to share with you first, so that you have a bit of clarity about the whole process of Prajnaparamita, Prajnaparamita studies, Prajnaparamita practice. Because people like me, decades and decades ago, when you come to it and you just go into it, it can be quite confusing if you don't have at least some simple overview of what's going on. And so I'd like to say a few general things, then we'll go back to Gampopa's details. What is so much of Prajnaparamita teaching, scripture, and because of that, our own thinking about? Most of it is refutation, denial, not denial, refutation, challenging arguments. Most of Prajnaparamita is no, can't be, no. And the bit of it that's not refutation, but that's affirmation, is the Buddha nature teachings. The Buddha nature teachings can't really work on us until we've got rid of a certain amount of delusion. Otherwise, as we hear the words and receive the teachings, we are going to be filtering it and translating it wrongly. So the whole point of the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma, get rid of this level of confusion, delusion, get rid of a deeper level of confusion. How do you get rid of it? You say, no. That's not true. That doesn't exist. Those two words, true, exist, are vital for all the Prajnaparamita teachings. What is true? What does exist? What is delusion, illusion, confusion? True exist. So the first two turnings of the wheel of Dharma are to get rid of when the delusions are gone, when we're not tricked by ego, when we're no longer taking the world as other and existing in its own right as it appears to us, then the Buddha nature teachings really make impact. They have their value. So that's one thing. A lot of this is refutation, but refutation of who and of what? Well, that's why you had the timeline in the first talk. We saw, and I mentioned in the last talk, of course, real Prajnaparamita, the real wisdom, the realization, has been there all the time since Buddha. Has to be. That's what Buddha was. He was clearest mind, wisest mind, the very best wisdom possible. He spent 45 years teaching hundreds of thousands of people in his lifetime. If he'd have died and nobody had got the wisdom he had, what a catastrophe. And what a failure as a teacher. Of course, his wisdom was transmitted. There are many fully awakened people because of him, or at least those who reached the level of stability, we call it first bodhisattva level, where his Prajnaparamita clarity of mind was held by them and then passed on by them generation after generation. That's for sure. But then we saw there was no writing at first. There were no Buddhist universities. Bit by bit, they came into the fore around the year 0. And after that, very much a big deal, lots of writing, lots of debate, lots of thinkers, Nagarjuna, and so on, their disciples. Prajnaparamita texts going up to 100,000 verses, and so on. So what were they arguing against, refuting? There were the non-Buddhists of their times, especially the Jains. Jainism started about the same time as Buddhism, and they had some amazing spiritual teachings which really sound wow, and you can get into them and think this is it. There were the Jains, but there were many other trends. I mean, these days we call them Hinduism, but it's not as though they all thought the same. They had very different ideas. There were the Samkhyas, and there were these, and then within the Jains there were different trends, different thinking. So Buddhist logic were arguing, debating with non-Buddhist beliefs, very prevalent in India. But then also the Prajnaparamita followers of Mahayana, were also refuting Buddhists who were following the Shravaka way and who had their own idea about what we experience. Always the same. The idea is what is true, what really exists. They're all pretty wise. Of course, they all see that everything that we experience is changing all the time. They knew about suffering. Many of them also believed in karma. We're not talking about that level of spiritual perception and why we make ourselves suffer and get caught up in endless repetitions of anger, lust, and so on that take us to suffering. They got those. It's kind of ABC of spirituality. But here we're talking on the level of Prajnaparamita of, in all of this, what is really true, what really exists, if anything. So within Buddhism, for instance, the Shravakas, different schools we call Shravaka, of which only really the Theravada has survived, believe that there's a world out there made of particles. Basically, there's mind and matter. No. So we're refuting that. And then within the Mahayana, different schools developed. So within the Mahayana, they're telling each other, no, that can't be right. No. And so on. So much of Prajnaparamita is about this. For us, it's frustrating as hell when you start to study Prajnaparamita in detail. You think, okay, you've got all these very interesting refutations of the Jains, of the Samkhyas, and so on like this. But what's relevant for us is our modern thinking, so much of it based on science and then Western philosophy and its discoveries and psychology these days, brain chemistry. I saw on last week's YouTube talk, somebody had put a long thing saying, oh, this is just all, it was a Darwinist brain chemistry kind of analysis. You know, none of that spiritual stuff exists. It's just the way we monkeys have developed, you know, and the way the brain works. fair enough. Somebody thinks that. But that's what we'd need today. We'd need Buddha to come now, and we'd need Shantideva to come now, Nagarjuna to come now, a Sangha to come now. Do a 10-year quick course in science, and then say, no, in something that really helps us question our view of what is true and what really exists. So it's very frustrating because when I spent months, years studying Prajnaparamita, going through the different texts, and that takes time. It's like we have this word unborn, or doesn't arise. We see it in lots, and people read it. So to understand that, we had a 1-month course in Samiling, 2 lectures a day, hour and a half, 3 hours a day for a month to understand Chandrakirti's Majjhimakāvatara, penetrating the meaning of the middle way. At the end of the month, we're starting to get it and to see how complicated it is, because unborn is a not. It's a no, un. So what's it talking about? The idea of arising, coming into being, existing. How can something exist? To understand what it's addressing, the different Indian schools of thought at the time, and Buddhist thought as well, and then how the arguments are and how subtle they get. And this comes from years and years, decades, centuries of debate in India. So I don't want to spend too long on that. It's history. I know it's boring for many people. But what you do need to know is that debate had 2 aspects. Religious competition, I think, not so nice. But then the nice part is an authentic wish to find the truth. In Indian debates, for the most part, when 2 great scholars, like a Buddhist and a Samkhya, debated, people came to those like people go to football matches today. They were a spectacle. Why? Because the king or the king's appointed representative was the judge. Whoever lost had to convert to the other person's faith, and all their followers and all their possessions, their ashrams, their monasteries, went over. So what we find in Indian history is they're all looking for their best debater to go out there and challenge and win over followers, monasteries. It wasn't just head stuff and a debate. It was really serious. And the king's army was obliged to enforce that. So people who were Buddhist, when they lost, they had to convert to one of the forms of Hinduism. That's really serious. So we find major debaters going around. In the story of Guru Rinpoche, we see one of his main emanations is as one of those debaters, because we were losing one monastery after another. They had some brilliant minds. So there's this search for truth as well. So I thought I needed to tell you about that. And so then the good news is that unless you really want to study that, then an overview like I'm providing might be enough for the moment. Otherwise, you can't just do it a little bit. If you're going to really study Prajnaparamita, then you need years of serious study. And you can't do it a bit, because it's like, if it was Western philosophy, you can understand a bit, you can read a few books, but if you really want to understand the evolution of thought, you need to go and do at least a degree in serious study to see how people's thought varied and criticized each other, and to weigh it up to come to your own conclusions. So in Tibet, the study of Prajnaparamita involved years of study. And then those years of study were not just accepting teachings, is you had to learn to debate so that your thinking is clear and it could be challenged. This is scary as anything. I mean, we are so used to our ego independence, the fact that you have to go and defend your thinking and debate with somebody. So we need to learn, first of all, language, because most of the time our language is so confusing. We use words loosely and we don't understand what the other person's talking about. When it comes to philosophy and debate, we need to define all the terms we use, like consciousness, awareness, cognition, all of this, so that as much as is humanly possible, we are talking about the same thing. So there's a whole language to learn. And then the rules of debate and so on. So, and you can't half do that. You need years. In the Gelugpa tradition, where they do this the most, for real Prajnaparamita studies, sometimes it's 5 or 6 years of study, all week long, 50 weeks a year. This is great for me because it gets me off the hook. There's no way in a couple of hours I can bring you to an understanding of Prajnaparamita. It's not why these talks are here. There's no way, even assuming I could do it, which I couldn't. But we don't have 5 years. We've not even got 5 more hours of these talks. So I need to tell you that we're not receiving Prajnaparamita in its fullness. We are spies, seeing what philosophers get up to, what they're doing, what they're talking about. Oh, roughly it's about that. And to get some sufficient, rough idea. That's really true. It's really true. And I want to share with you a quote. So when we do study Prajnaparamita, mainly we study it through what we call middle way philosophy, Madhyamaka. Where most people start is with Chandrakirti's penetrating the middle way, about arisal, being, coming into being, born, unborn. And so there's quite a good English translation of that, along with a translation of Mipam Rinpoche's commentary. Mipam's wonderful teacher for scholars because he sums up things very so clearly and beautifully. So he's written a commentary to it that's translated into English. And it tells how if you study Prajnaparamita, you need to do it traditionally according to its great masters, Chandrakirti, Nagarjuna, Shantideva, and so on, later on Atisha, and do it exactly in the way that the understanding and the mechanisms for learning about it have been handed down. No Lama this or Rinpoche that's opinions, because even Lama this or Rinpoche that, they've only got their own version of it. They are not Nagarjuna. They are not a Sangha. And although it may be very helpful It is a flavored, a colored, a simplified version. That's not the real thing. So this is what Mipam Rinpoche says, with some quotes from the Buddha. As the perfect Buddha has proclaimed, the nature of phenomena, appearing undeniably, is emptiness. They are not other than emptiness, and yet they arise as the undeniable appearance of ordinary existence. Therefore, emptiness and dependently arising phenomena are inseparable. That quote is what Prajnaparamita is all about. The nature of phenomena appearing undeniably. Undeniably. Who's denying things? No. Buddhists, Jains, Samkhyas, all these people debating in India, they're all denying things. What they are not denying, this is very important, is our current perception. Nobody's denying that. Ken's in Ken's world, and then each of you here is in your world. Nobody's denying that. That's your world. That's my world. If I'm seeing pink elephants dancing around the room while I'm talking to you, they may be illusions. I may be ate the wrong mushrooms for breakfast or something. But nobody's denying the fact that my experience is pink elephants. None of them. They all know that in the world, through whatever it is, karma, and whatever it is, we have our subjective version of reality. Nobody's denying that. What they're denying is, or what they're arguing with each other about is, but what's the real truth of the matter? So in the Buddha's quote, this undeniably, so it says the nature of phenomena. Phenomena means what we experience, things. Appearing undeniably, appearing to you as they appear to you, appearing to me as they appear to me, the nature of those things is emptiness. So we'll come back to defining that. They, my pink elephants and your reality, is not other than emptiness. It's a huge statement. It's not other than, there is an emptiness, voidness, shunyata. Bye, man, I'm going to spend some time in shunyata now. The void. So avoid that kind of void. There is, as Buddha says this, there is no shunyata, emptiness, voidness, other than the voidness of what appears to you and appears to me, the pink elephants or whatever it is. Those appearances are not other than emptiness, and yet they arise as the undeniable appearance. Nobody's denying that that's what it seems like to you, of ordinary existence. Therefore, emptiness and dependently arising phenomena are inseparable. Let me finish Mipam's quote. No one in the realm of gods or men can oppose or overturn this lion's roar on the path of reasoning. It is this path alone, as expounded in the texts of Madhyamika, that is to be upheld. If, however, one is unable to grasp the fact that emptiness and dependent arising do not exclude each other, and if on top of this one adds words and expressions that merely reflect one's own understanding, but do not appear in the sutras and the major commentaries, it may seem, for the time being, that one has found a good and easy expedient. You read something on internet, such and such a Rinpoche has given you a couple of paragraphs summing up voidness. And really, wow, that's it. If it's exactly the same as what's said by the Buddha and in the great treatise, okay. But if it's this one or that Rinpoche's version of it, However, carrying on the quote, all assertions that contradict the sutras and great commentaries are inevitably defective. Consequently, if when explaining the middle way, one keeps to the manner in which it was expounded and commented on in the Madhyamaka Sutras and Shastras, it is definite one will gain, through rational means, a commensurate certainty, and that unmistaken, authentic wisdom will take birth. So this is all to make the point that if you really want to get on top of Madhyamaka middle way, Prajnaparamita, there is no shortcut. You need to do at least some of the basic studies fully enough with a good and challenging teacher who will test how well you've understood those texts or not. Either we go that way, but there's no half measures. That's the main point I wanted to make. Now, so that's one thing. The quote that we just had from Mipam Rinpoche, where he quotes the Buddha and he says, this is the lion's roar of truth that all of Madhyamaka is about. It is about the two truths. What manifests to us, which isn't being denied, being accepted. That's our experience just now through the power of karma, through everything we are. Nobody's denying that. What we're saying is, but what is the real truth of the matter? So we get the two truths. The relative truth, which is this undeniable appearance, that's what it seems like. So I want to introduce for us a term, seems to be, how it seems to be to us. The seems to be world. That's called relative truth because it's relative to your karma, my karma, a butterfly's karma, a ghost's karma. That's how they experience the world. Relative, it's relative to them. It is sometimes called provisional truth. Quite a few different translations. In Tibetan, if we translate it literally, it's called Kunsop Dempa. Dempa means truth. Kunsop means totally fake. Sop in Kunsop means a mask, like a mask you put on. Kun means totally. It's the truth of what is totally fake. It's an amazing little expression. The truth of what is totally fake. That's the same as when the Buddha says, undeniable appearance. So, well, let's take four examples. A dream. Let's start with that. In a dream, you're in a place. And when you're in that place, you really feel it's a place. You can see a long way. It's miles and miles of it. And if you go over there, it could be like this. It's a real place. It's not you. It's a place. You meet people. Hello. And they're nice. They're not nice. They're real people. They're other people, and so on and so on. Until you wake up. That's real and other. And when you wake up, you realize it was just all your own stuff in your head. It's not like you went somewhere where there was that castle and those trees and those people and that kind of a dog. It was all your mind. So there's the seems to be in the dream. But then what's really going on, what really is the delusions of a sleeper. You dreamt of what? I don't know, but often with our dreams, when you look back, you say, oh, that's right. I saw that on the TV yesterday, and then somebody was talking to me about this. And then all of that kind of stuff that's been going on in your head formulates itself. And then you dream of dolphins playing with donuts because you saw a donut in a shop window and somebody was talking about dolphins and so on. Sometimes you can work it out, but it's just the stuff in your head. Made the seems to be other world that was for you real. It existed. It was true. It made you cry, made you laugh. When we wake up, then we realize what really happened. You were dreaming. You were dreaming. One example. Seems to be world, really is world. Another example, mirage. So seems to be water on the surface over there. Looks like water, seems to be water. But what it really is a trick of the light. There's no water. Seems to be water. Really is the play of light. The play of light and our human memory of water, the play of light, eyes, the brain, memory. Seems to be, really is. Another example, hypnosis. You are hypnotized. You are a cow. And then everybody in the talk, because I'm such a powerful hypnotist, I can do it over Zoom, start going, you feel like a cow, and you've got 4 legs, and you're smelling the hay and the grass, and so on. So if somebody's watching me hypnotize you, and you being hypnotized, the seems to be reality is, the really is reality is you've been hypnotized. You've never been a cow. You aren't a cow in that moment. You're a human being, but you don't know it anymore. Hypnotized. And then a very nice, cliched, but very, very, very useful example, 4th one, rainbow. We see colors in the sky. Now, these days, we've got all the scientific knowledge. We know there's water vapor, there's light, there's our human eye, and there's a brain that can receive the messages and so on. So it seems to be colors up there. But there are no colors in the sky. So the really is like the mirage. It is a play of light. So now, just with those 4 sort of famous examples that we could explore at much more length, that's not the task today, then we see that what seems to be the landscape in the dream, the mirage on the desert, the hypnosis reality being a cow, and then the colors up in the sky. That's what seems to be the really is, which we call the absolute truth, the real truth of the matter, the truth, what really exists. No colors exist in the sky. No cow exists as you. No castle and landscape exists in the dream, and so on. The truth of the matter is the truth of the matter. It's at the same time. It's not an absolute truth, which is an other reality. It's not like heaven and earth, and that voidness is voidness, something. So what you need to know, what comes out of all these Prajnaparamita studies, is, and this is the definition, voidness, shunyata, emptiness, whichever word you prefer. Shunyata, emptiness, is the wisdom. It's the equivocates to wisdom. It's the equivalent of wisdom. Voidness always means wisdom. It's not a state. It's not a feeling. You get Trungpa Rinpoche describes it as a panoramic, expansive, and those feelings can be there. But the main point is, it's wisdom that knows the difference between seems to be and really is. It's the wisdom in the moment that understands how and why things seem to be, but knows what really is. Voidness and wisdom are interchangeable. Voidness is the wisdom that knows the difference between illusion and truth. Seeming existence and the delusion of that seeming existence. These very, very, very important points. All the rest is the details, taking it thing by thing, issue by idea, taking it apart. No. So that we can understand how we were deluded and what the real truth of the matter is. So we're going to plunge into Gampopa, who's going to go through this in 6 areas of what we need to know, what we need to develop. Now, before we do that, I want to give you a bit of teasing homework, because next week we don't have a Prajnaparamita talk. Next week is our monthly Tonglen for those who are in that course. So you've got 2 weeks to play with your awareness. And I want to take anything, but let's take the example of a tree. And I think we can all get access to a tree somewhere in the next 2 weeks. And so seems to be that thing that's got green leaves, well, not this time of the year in the northern hemisphere, but never mind. But the thing with branches, a trunk, leaves, a tree, makes a bit of noise in the wind, rustles. You can go up to it, you can hug it. If it's too big to hug, you can press it. It's got kind of presence. So we think that tree exists. Nobody's denying that. Buddha's not denying it. Prajnaparamita, most of the other Indian philosophies, that for us, a tree is that green-brown thing that we experience. Nobody's denying that. What they are denying and what they are putting forward their own ideas about is what is really there. It's not what seems to be to us, because one thing that's very important, if I say tree, when I was just talking, what was in your head? Did you have a picture of a tree? Right? A shape? Branches? Colors? Shape? Color? They are human experiences. If there is no I, they are what eyes connected to brains, that's quite important, experience. The tree itself, does it have color? Is it green? Of course not. Green is only an experience in the universe for beings with eyes and brains that experience color. The tree isn't green. And for other beings with different eyes and brains, it might be what we call blue. And in fact, it really is like that, because I saw one amazing film where biologists, botanists, biologists had worked out how butterflies see plants. And they don't capture the same range of the electromagnetic spectrum that we do, and their brains work differently. So they've made a little film of what it's like for a butterfly to fly through a garden. And you see some of the things that are vivid for us, they're almost grayed out. And the stuff that's interesting for a butterfly, because you can drink it or eat it, is what you're about, is like 10 times more vivid and attractive. But anyway, that's because butterflies have butterfly eyes and butterfly brains. And we've got human eyes and human brains. But color and shape are perceptions of eyes and brains. The tree doesn't have color. So we have to go out and look at a tree and its greenness and its brownness and think, well, what is there? So then, of course, these days we'd say, oh yeah, but there are the atoms and the presence and that. And then because of the light, then we see color. Now the idea of exist that we've explored in the last two talks, if something exists, it exists in its own right and independently. So the green of the tree would be green in the daytime, in the nighttime, because it is green. It's green. It's green whether eyes see it or don't see it. If it existed as we think it exists, it doesn't. So what's there? We might say there are the atoms that do that. But you can go through exactly the same process. What are atoms? It's what we humans describe as our experience. And it's wonderful. Our modern physics in the last 100 years has gone through this thinking process and realized that we are not talking about stuff out there. We're talking about our version of stuff out there. Beautiful redefinition of physics is not describing what is in the universe. It says physics is the language which gives humans the means to communicate one person's experience to another. Such a shift. Not saying absolutely it is what we experience. Of course it isn't. That's what we experience, because we're going around with these things that see, and we've got these ears that hear, and we've got our own take on things. But that's not what's there. What we experience isn't what's there. There's no green. How can there be? Green's a light experience for eyes. And it's like if there's no ears or if you're deaf? There's no sound. Sound is a human experience. So let's take another example from a tree. Let's take a waterfall. A waterfall, you can see, as I just said it, you had an image in your mind of a waterfall, I think most of you. But there we can go and touch it, we can feel it's cold and the pressure of the water, and we can hear the sound. But sounds are something that ears connected to brains experience. There is no sound there. The sound's in here. Now this is also modern science, modern physics is why I'm saying it. I'm not trying to take you into some spiritual other view of things. You can use your modern education and just sit there in wonder in front of the waterfall. Now let's imagine it's not a waterfall, it's a sewage outlet, right? Sewage, so it smells as well, But does it smell? No, you smell something. Smell, and maybe if you were a dog, this is a lovely smell. Oh, so much, so much, gosh, like the way dogs love to explore a path. Everyone who's peed there, crapped there, and everything is. It's a wonderful encyclopedia of smells. And for us, it's kind of like this. But smell is something that nose is connected to brains experience. The smell isn't there. So once we take away our five senses, our experience, what's there? That tree, that waterfall, that sewage outlet. It's a very helpful thing to do because it helps us, like the examples, the mirage, the dream, and so on, understand when we talk about what really is, it can only be in relation to what seems to be. There's no really is that's another world apart, no voidness that's something else, no emptiness, no shunyata. And this is the difference between the bodhisattva's experience, nirvana, bodhisattva's nirvana, and the arhat's nirvana. The arhats are in a state. The dhyanas, peace, freedom from suffering and so on, but they are in a state which is so free and peaceful. There, that is other. Here, for the bodhisattva, what we're aiming for is this simultaneity in the moment where, as we experience what seems to be to us as human beings, as Ken with his karma and so on, and we have more and more clarity about what is really going on, as explained by Chandrakirti and Nagarjuna and the Sangha and all the others. So that's the homework. You might even find a sewage outlet somewhere. That will perhaps be the most vivid of the examples. But if not, a tree, a river, some rushing water will be very helpful. So now, having primed you with that, let's go to Gampopa and pick up our studies. So last time where we ended, we saw there are three types of wisdom, and we saw that there is the worldly wisdom. We saw in the past, these were the four great sciences or five sciences of India, and these days it's all of our science and arts, everything that we know and that we use through our scientific knowledge, our artistic abilities, arts meaning in general the arts, languages, and all the ways we know to create. There's worldly wisdom. There was the lesser transcendent wisdom that takes us to nirvana. We saw nirvana was not something, not a state, but nirvana means simply no more suffering. Suffering has ended. Only that. It doesn't tell us what's there. It tells us what's no longer there. It's like when you've had a cold or flu, like many of us have had these last weeks, you can say, the flu's over, the cold's finished. It just tells you what's not there anymore. It doesn't tell you what's there. So nirvana, the lesser transcendent wisdom, takes us to the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. Nirvana, a state of deep, peaceful, meditative absorption. Then the greater transcendent wisdom comes through Mahayana study and meditation. And it says it is aware that every phenomenon is by its very nature void, empty, unborn, without foundation, without root. So every phenomenon, we're not talking about ideas, it's everything we meet each moment. There's the relative truth, what seems to be to us. There's the absolute truth, where there is the presence of clarity, wisdom, where we understand why and how it seems like that, and at the same time, how it isn't what it seems to be. This afternoon, in time's different, we have time zones. Taisitupa is giving the first of two talks, one today, I think one tomorrow, about the two truths. That will be really, really helpful. So we find what seems to be, then we have the wisdom that sees through the illusion, knows why there's the illusion, and knows what really is. And in the case of our lineage, our Kaju lineage, then what really is, all the time, is the clarity of Buddha mind, awakened mind. Buddha means awakened. Absolutely complete mind. Buddha means absolutely, totally perfect mind. So that's what we learn to discover in each moment. But it's not an otherness, some other place we go. It is the truth of what arises in each moment. It's fresh every moment. It's not a state that's other that we can go to. It's the truth of each moment, and nobody is denying that that moment may be a carrot, it might be a sewage outlet, whatever is the moment. That's why on your timeline for this course, I've included Saraha, the great Mahasiddha, and you'll see his time is about the same time as Shantideva. Because Saraha, and not just Saraha and his Buddhist companions, but some non-Buddhists too, were very much aware of what is called sahaja. Sahaja. Sahaja means simultaneous, at the same time. So the absolute truth, ultimate truth, happens simultaneously as the relative truth. It is the ultimate truth of the relative. Now, at the risk of upsetting Mr. Mipam, I would like to give you a very silly example, but maybe it's helpful for the process. Maybe you're not on social media very much, but sometimes, like I only do Facebook, and more adverts. Some of the adverts are ridiculous. Amazing warehouse sale. You can get a brand new iPhone for $30. Amazing. I got to get in there quick. You know, there are only a few left. It's somebody's gone bankrupt. I get a brand new boxed, sealed iPhone. All I have to do is give them my credit card details and my address, And then they'll send me a brand new iPhone. So people fall for it. And then bit by bit, first you look at the adverts for something and soon you realize another scam. And then you move on. Seems to be a wonderful bargain. Really is a scam. So at first, you sometimes need to think, or you see something, oh, that's wonderful, I'm going to get one of those for somebody, get one for myself. Think, no, just a moment. Before you click on anything, think, Ken. And then you have to think, no, resist, go away. But as time goes by, in less than a second, you see the advert, you've seen what it is, what it seems to be, what it really is. You don't need to think through it. You don't need to work with yourself. You just scroll by. It happens in split seconds. We get closer and closer to the simultaneity of the real truth of the matter. People want your credit card details and your address. And the seems to be thing, somebody's making it possible for you to get a real bargain. Seems to be delusion, suffering, really is freedom. So that's just an example from me. It's not from the scriptures. It's not from Nagarjuna. He didn't do Facebook. And so, but it may be helpful to understand this process of, at first, a laborious explanation that helps you understand the difference between seems to be and really is, and that with familiarity and growing wisdom, then it becomes more and more spontaneous. Okay. So we want the greater transcendent wisdom. Now the next section in Gampopa is called that which is to be understood. So here we come to Gampopa's analysis, Prajnaparamita. First, 6 points. We need to dismantle illusory belief in some kind of substantial reality. Illusory belief that there is substantial reality. Secondly, we need to dismantle our illusory belief in unreality. That will be interesting. Number 3, the mistake of believing in non-existence. The mistake of believing in non-existence. There are lots of these negatives and double negatives. The mistake of believing in non-existence, like no self. That's a non-existence, right? No self. Do you believe in no self? And what's the difference between believing in no self and not believing in self? The fact that you don't believe in a self, a fixed persona, you don't believe in a fixed persona, that's okay. But if you believe in no self, that's a mistake. Does anybody do that? Who? Have you done it? Have you heard people do it? Do some Buddhists do it? Rather than going around me, and I, they're going around no me, no I, no nothing, no this, no that. And they believe. You can even say, okay, now let's meditate in no self. And they'll kind of, if you ask people to do that, I'm sure they'll sit down, and then you can stop 2 minutes. They say, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing with your mind that you can sit there and be in no self? No self is the same as no crocodiles. Just now in this room where I am, there are no crocodiles. There are no pyramids. But it's not that there are non-pyramids, non-crocodiles. Anyway, we'll come to that, just so that you've got some idea. I'm not just reading out titles. You've got some clue what we're talking about. Then belief in reality, belief in unreality, non-existence, the mistake of both beliefs. They're beliefs. They're beliefs. You're stuck in an idea. You are not awake in the reality. You are stuck in an idea of the reality, the two truths. The undeniable fact that you're experiencing whatever you are. Nobody's denying that. It's just when it comes to saying what's the truth of the matter. And the truth is about how all ideas, all concepts are incredibly limiting, and you won't become Buddha or you're stuck in them. We'll never think our way into becoming Buddha. Never. You won't be there. Oh, yeah. Buddha. You thought your way into it. Never. We need to rise above the power of the conceptual consciousness. In a way, and then that gets interesting, so that the seems to be of thoughts and projections, and there really is, are simultaneous. Number 5, what is the path of liberation? What is, number 6, the nature of liberation? For the first part, dismantling illusory belief in substantial reality. So he quotes Atisha on page 10. It's illogical for something existing to arise. Also for something non-existent, like sky, flowers. So it is illogical for something existing to arise. Let's stop, and always need to stop and think with a quote. We'll take it, go back word by word. It is illogical. So we're talking about logic. The only way we humans have to communicate with each other, once we've defined a language, we've defined a discussion process, then we use logic. We'll come to that in a few seconds. We use logic. In the debates in India between Buddhists and non-Buddhists, at one point there were two of the best scholars, best Buddhist scholar, best, I forget which branch of Hinduism it was, scholar. So hundreds of monasteries depended on the result of their debate. Whoever won would have all the followers convert, of the other person convert, and all their monastery, all their goods, everything, all their ashrams. So much at stake. So working out the rules of debate and the definitions of the language took almost 2 years before they even started debating. Right? So it says it is illogical. Logic is the only way we have of thinking for ourselves and challenging somebody else's thought, or improving our mind through somebody else's challenging thought. So it says it is illogical. We're dealing with logic here, not direct experience, logic. For something existing. So somebody there, George, thinks this really exists. This is ultimate reality, even though this is your illusion, my illusion. What really exists is Brahma. What really exists is God. Or what really exists is the cosmos. Or in the case of the Samkhyas, what really exists is the universe with an endless potential. Already everything's there. As a result, we just need to trigger the causes of the result. It's like a computer. Everything's in the computer. You type this will come up. You make the cause. The result's already there. In your computer, you've got your accounts. You have to go to your accounts app, type this, and like this. It comes up on screen. It's been there all the time, but you make it manifest. So they think all the results are there. The universe is like a huge panorama of possible experiences already there. They exist. And that our life is going from this station of experience to that. What are you into this morning? I'm in the cosmic coffee reality. That's always been there as a potential. I've triggered that potential, and now that's my experience in the moment. So the universe is a huge potential. They talk of Purush and Prakrit and things like this. They have their own ideas. So in this quote, it says, exist. It is illogical for something to exist. In any of the ideas of what is ultimate existence, it's illogical for something existing to arise. Now, this is the word born. Often we see the opposite in deep teachings, the unborn. But born, coming into being, is a big deal in Prajnaparamita. It is a refutation, a denial of the possibility of coming into being. It's not logical that something could come into being. So that's what Atisha says. It is illogical for something that you think exists to have come into being, or to come into being. It's not logical. So, Gampopa, in this section, how to dismantle our illusions, of all the possible things he can go to, he goes to this quote from Atisha. It's very important. It's what so much of Prajnaparamita is about, the logic of coming into existence and somebody's idea that this really exists. So there we see, how does the middle way tackle this with logic, these ideas of existing? So it's compared with shooting an arrow, or you've got a weapon. You've got a weapon, you've got a target, and you've got a way of shooting the weapon, and you've got your own defense. Okay, so I'm debating with you. We're talking about my idea of really true, your idea of really true, and so on. We are basically fighting, right? We're arguing. What are my weapons? How am I using them? What are your weapons? How are you using them? So the target has two areas. It's belief in existence, of course. That's the target for the middle way. It's the target for Prajnaparamita wisdom. Belief in existence, but that falls into two areas. The belief in a persona, me, existing, and then the belief in phenomena, things, stuff, what we experience as other than me. So we're down to really core, important stuff. Wise human beings talking with each other, discussing, arguing with each other. And everyone here, I'm sure you feel like you, don't you? Do you feel like Ken Holmes? Do you feel like anybody else here? Do you feel like anybody else anywhere? You feel like you. Of course you do. Everybody does. Everybody does. So then our idea of, our logic, our philosophy, our religion of who am I really? What is this awareness that I am of? And that's the other side, awareness of stuff, other people, what's going on, the universe, whatever you want to call it. So we have two areas of ideas of truly existing. People, personas, and what they experience, those two areas. That's the target. That's what we're focused on. Then the weapon we use, says, middle way thinkers use to destroy the target is the faultless reasoning of a clear mind, based either on direct experience or logical deduction. So when it comes to debate, we use a language of commonly shared experience, and then a language of deduction, where if it's not directly experienced, like a fire in front of us, then we can say, when we talk about deduce things, like the fire on the other side of the hill, because we see smoke. Okay, they're two simple examples, so relevant to our science. We've got ideas these days of particles, subatomic particles, and so on, which are deduced because we experience them via incredible machines. This Hadron Collider in Switzerland. It's kilometers of sophisticated machinery. It's just amazing. But then somewhere out of all of that, we get a photograph, we capture light vibrations that then get translated. And then all those wonderful pictures of galaxies that you get from NASA, the ones that look like butterflies or they look like this. If you could go there in a space rocket, you could never see those things with your eyes. They've translated what we can't see, electromagnetic frequencies beyond our vision, ultraviolet, infrared, and so on, into visible spectrum so that we get an idea of what's there. Or this gas, that gas. So to show them apart, they make one purple, one blue. Ooh, it looks pretty. But you're never going to be able to go there and see it like that. It's a translation. It is a deduction. We assume that that's there because we have, by various means, proof. It's just like seeing the smoke coming from behind the hill and saying somebody's lit a fire. We can't see the fire. We can't directly experience the fire. So we're in debate. We can talk about a real fire in front of us and what it does and how it burns, or we can talk about what we can deduce. So that's the weapon that middle way thinkers use, the thinking of a clear mind. The way in which, page 11 at the bottom, middle way deploys its weapons is through the famous logical refutations of the great masters, all of them descendants of Nagarjuna thoughts. Nagarjuna's the no man. No, he shows what's wrong. It's cruel. Because basically, you're just telling people what's wrong with their thinking. It's kind of like if you ever saw, if you're older, this American series of a detective called Columbo. Maybe some of you saw Columbo. He'd kind of stand there looking not too bright, and he can say, just a moment. Didn't you just say that? Whereas earlier on you said that, and it's not the same, is it? So we listen to what the Samkhya's are saying about Purusha and Prakrit, and that really exists and is manifesting. And then you say, So we don't give them our idea. We just say, hey, just a moment. You said that, but then you said that. How could that be? Like in, maybe we know here, Christianity, Christian thinking more than anything. You can say, God is changeless. God creates. Oh, just a minute. How can you create without changing? Before you started creating, you weren't a creator. You weren't doing anything. Now you're a creator. You've changed. You can't be changeless. You can be a creator, fine, but you can't be changeless. You can't have it both ways. It shows, it's just a simple example, but you listen to what the other person's saying as logic. It's all about logic and sense and reasonable. And you say, but what you're saying is contradictory. So when we go for these months of study of the different schools, we see how Nagarjuna's logic examines the other person's propositions and shows the contradictions or the impossibilities in what they're saying. So that's how the weapon of a clear mind, the weapon is a clear mind that listens and says, but no, it can't be. No, you're in contradiction with yourself. And then it says that the two major trends in Nagarjuna's followers, the Prasangikas, they're the followers of Buddha Palita, and the Svatantrikas, the followers of Bhava Viveka. So their way of arguing. We come back to them because now it says the defense. So what's the defense needed for? Is you take somebody's beliefs apart, they say, well, what do you think then? Okay, it can't be like this. What do you think? And there are two responses. The followers, the Svatantrikas, as followers of Bhava Viveka in Nagarjuna's thought, they always come back to interdependence. And that's where we'll conclude in a couple of minutes with a very important point, interdependence. They say, no, nothing really exists because everything depends on other to be what it is. Like the green of the tree depends on your eye and brain to be green. It's not green in itself. If something depends on other to be what it is, it doesn't exist absolutely in its own right, independently, which is what people are saying, what the other faiths are saying always. Something exists in its own right, independently. So those followers use interdependence as what we believe. The most interesting ones, and the ones that most of, let's say, us following our present, if we're in the Karmakaju lineage, way follow, those, the Prasangikas, the followers of Buddha Palita. When somebody says, what do you believe? We just smile. Because we know that all ideas are just ideas. It's just somebody's blah, blah, blah in the head about reality, which is nothing to do with your blah, blah, blah. Through meditation in particular, we get to a transcendence of the conceptual mind, where we realize that all thinking and projection can be very helpful to get us out of suffering, to make us wise human beings and so on. It's very helpful to a certain point, but we need to go beyond that to understand the human need to understand, to have a model, to have a security, to have reference points. It's enormous. When we take away the reference points and we start collapsing our historical beliefs, you'll realize how threatening that is. You don't have your original ground to stand on. Your ignorance can be bliss in that sense. So one realizes through meditation experience, through logic, that ideas are all just a very primitive, such a primitive mechanism of humanity. Looking at the clock. So when people say, well, what do you believe? I don't need to believe. I don't need to have a castle of ideas and projections and definitions and boxes and labels to put stuff into it. Because everything so amazingly is what it is. Just to take one example, imagine two people here from our session. You meet each other in Liverpool Street Station in London for the first time. You say, "Oh, I've seen you, saw you on the Zoom." That's right. And then you talk about Ken. Now, I'm sure that the version of Ken that's in your mind and the version of Ken that's in a person, three little screens along in this Zoom, you've got the little windows of people, is quite different. Probably if you tried to overlap them, maybe you get 1% overlap. And none of them would be anything like the real Ken. Anyway, your idea, your subjective experience of me, or Taisitupa used to use the example of Edinburgh, Scotland. One person goes to Scotland, they go every year, they've gone here, there, and there. Another person's gone to Scotland. If you could actually video and compare their experience of the people they met, the places they went, and run the film, would you even find two frames the same in each of their experience? And yet, if they meet each other in Adelaide, Australia, and the one says, I've been to Scotland. Oh, Scotland. And then they're both talking about Scotland. But they're talking about completely different things. And even if it was the fish and chips or the haggis, they had a different experience of it, different shop, different cooking, their own reaction to it, and so on and so on. So Taisitupa used to say, how much, when I say Scotland and you say Scotland, is there even, in truth, 1% of overlap in what we mean? Yet we say Scotland. And my talk just now, an hour and a half, I've been bombarding you with words, and each word did that. We went through a thought journey. We went through a conceptual journey where I used all of each word had its own Ken history behind it, and I plugged it into you with your history behind it. So we've got 37 people here on the talk, 37 different versions of this talk. I was amazed last week, we had almost 400 people watched it on YouTube, or 400 versions of the talk. So concepts. So for those middle way followers, when they say, well, what do you think? But that's not fair, because you just destroyed what I think and you won't tell me what you think. That's right. So are you saying you don't think anything? No, you're saying I don't think anything. I'm not saying that. What are you saying? No. How to lose friends and make enemies. Anyway, learn how to take everyone's world apart and then not have your own one to propose otherwise. So that's where we have to stop. And we've seen that in many ways this middle way is about logic and logicians and philosophers talking with each other. I remind you what we had already in previous talks. There is the conceptual, intellectual way of approaching Prajnaparamita, and there is the experiential meditation way of getting to the wisdom that we want. The conceptual knowledge is helpful, but what we really want is the actual clarity, of knowing in each moment the difference between what seems to be and what really is. Okay, well, we'll stop there and we'll dedicate may whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, mind defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Thank you. So have fun with your homework and go and look at trees and mountains and try to distinguish the difference between what is your experience and what's really there. Okay. So over to you. If you've got any.
Ken, can I come in?
Yeah, sure, Charlie.
Kind of two things here from Trangur Rinpoche's primordial awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he gives the example of like in a dream, you see an elephant. Yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, you wake up, you realize there was no elephant. It was a dream. You know, it's so as in. So as with all external phenomena. But the way I was saying, in the waking consciousness, you know, if you see an elephant, you could maybe go up and touch the elephant, or the elephant could trample you. You know, it's real. You know.
In a dream, you can go up and touch an elephant, and you could dream that it was trampling you.
Yeah, but in waking consciousness, when it could trample you. You could be killed. You can actually touch it. You know, I don't see I don't see the kind of relevance as if it's at the same time waking consciousness and dream.
Well, dream is an example used to help us understand how our mind projects outer and other, and the power of that. So it's not saying that the waking state is the same as dream. We're saying it's like a dream. It's like a dream in as much as, or only in the aspect of we take our experience as being what's really there. That's why I'm asking you to look at a tree, to understand what we human beings with our five senses and so on experience. When we come to examine dream state and waking state, there's a huge difference. And the main difference is this: on a relative level, in the dream, it is 100% you and your stuff, your head, your consciousness, your history, it's all your own inner references. In the waking state, so in the dream, it's 100% you. The whole universe of what happens in a dream is your consciousness experience. In the waking state, we are just tiny. We're like the speck of dust in a whole universe. We are one sentient being amongst trillions and zillions, and we interact with them according to the power of karma. And that's very real. And like in a lucid dream, you might be able to change the elephant into a pink fairy. But you try changing a real life waking state elephant into a pink fairy, you can do all the mind yoga you want, and you won't succeed. And I asked people who lucid dream, I asked Charlie Morley, I said, have you ever managed to actually rendezvous with another lucid dreamer? So that, you're not just in your own world, but you can actually communicate and share worlds. And he said, no, not. So that's another issue. So the dream example is an example to help us understand how subjective our interpretation of what's going on is, because when we wake up, it's crystal clear. So there's another dimension to that, is that when we understand shunyata, emptiness, when we wake up to first bodhisattva level and beyond, our experience of daytime and elephants will be different to what it was before. The same difference as waking up from a dream, then we realize, so we wake up from our subjective projections onto people, onto things, and we become very lucid about how people and things, as we experience them, manifest to our mind through interdependence, through the power of karma. So it's just like in the dream, we can see, yesterday I saw a documentary about dolphins. I passed a shop with donuts. I saw a dolphin in the dream balancing donuts on its nose. We can understand, that's because there was that. In the same way, we can understand, I react to my brother, my father, my mother, my guru, in such and such a way, because this is how my mind has historically developed. And when we can have the lucidity to have stability and clarity and objectivity for our own historical existence, then we see just how reactive and interpretive we are. So that's an example.
So it's all mind.
Yeah.
The other point I was trying to make was we say we are mind if we if we see things, it's our perception. I might see green as green, you might see green as blue, and we have individual perceptions, of what things look like, if you like. So thing is, if I was to phone somebody and say, you're in this room and there's this thing in the corner, how could we have the same? We need to have the same perception for them to identify it and say, yes, here, I see it, there, it's there. But if they have an individual perception, how can they see, what I see?
Well, this is why the Buddha's main teaching, the most important teaching, the most profound teaching, is about karma, cause and effect. So in karma, we have the personal karma, we have close karma, like couple karma, family karma. Then we're in a world where we have our national karma, and so on. So karma is multi-layered, all happening at the same time. So that means that if somebody's never gone somewhere, but I'm on the phone and giving them instructions, I say, you go down this street, okay, you can see a very tall building that's yellow, and they say, yeah. It's part of our common reality because of our commonly shared karma. This world that we perceive is our commonly shared karma. So some things are the same for all of us, but the way we experience them is different. It can be like haggis, yeah, or haggis, blah, but it's the commonly shared fish and chip shop place you got into to buy the same haggis. It's just the reaction was different, and then that can go very, very deep in real meaningful terms. It could be that your evil mother-in-law or something served you haggis, and you've got deep-rooted memories or something like this. Not mother-in-law, stepmother, something like that. Then it gets really real to be able to distinguish individual projection from what's there on a relative level, undeniable level of commonly shared reality. Just now there are wars going on. We might not be in the war, but relatively they're happening. So understanding karma is enormous. It's enormous. And I think it wasn't a direct answer to your question, Charlie, but I think the answer to your question is about karmas and how and when they overlap or seem to overlap.
Okay.
Hi, Ken.
At
the beginning, you mentioned the role of debate, particularly in the no phase. And it reminded me of something many years ago when Tai Si Tupa was in Dublin, and I was his chauffeur for some time. And when I was driving around, I suppose I was a bit cheeky, but I asked him, is there some subject that you would like to be better at or learn more about? But he took it quite seriously, and he thought for a few seconds, and then he said, yes, I would like to be a better debater. And then he added, I can't remember his exact words, but he said something like, there are some or several teachers with whom I wouldn't last very long in debate. And I thought that was a very interesting answer, because even somebody at his level, the importance of debate in their understanding.
Yeah, because when Taisuttu put, like the other people of his generation, they fled Tibet. They were in India, and he was quite ill for some years. So unlike his contemporaries, he wasn't receiving the teachings on logic and debate in Rumtek, he had to be sent to the hills. And that's why he became a very good friend of Sherpa Tenzing, the one who was up Everest for the first ascent of Everest. He was like a very loving uncle for him. They spent a lot of time together. So that really helped Taisitaba, because while his contemporaries were in the monastery all the time learning debate, he was learning about life and meeting Westerners and other people, and it gave him a very big advantage, and in English language as well. But debate is a skill of super sharp, clear, logical mind, and you can only develop it by doing it. It's like anything, like a martial art is compared to a combat, and you do need to work on it, and I think mainly the debate, but there were some other aspects of a formal Dharma upbringing that he regrets not having had. But of course, he made up for it so many other ways, and he has the deep inner clarity.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Just very briefly, Ken.
Yes.
I think it's really interesting living with tinnitus, because I now, for many, many years, I've now had sounds in my head all the time, apart from actually when I'm sleeping. So in a dream, I don't have tinnitus. But it's like, it's very, I can hear it. It's very, very real. Sometimes in one ear, it goes louder. Sometimes new sounds happen. And I know it doesn't exist. I know it's simply, it's my mind. It's what's happening in my head. But it's fascinating because to all intents and purposes, it is there. It is real.
What a gift.
What exists, yeah.
What a gift.
I probably don't use it enough, actually. I don't use that gift enough. Thank you.
No, it is, because we're a bit like submarines, We have to communicate, to understand what's going on. Like in the submarine, you put up the periscope, or you've got devices. We've got these eyes and ears and so on. And the moment we realize that what we experience right now in this moment is in here and not out there, is huge. It's scary. It's scary because, like what you see with all the science, is light waves bouncing off something. The something absorbs part of the spectrum. Another bit it doesn't absorb gets reflected back. It hits your eye, and it goes to the back of the eye where you've got the rods and cones, and stimulates nerves. And the nerves stimulate the visual cortex in the brain. Then another part of the brain, which in that moment is letting in visual cortex messages, experiences it. Everything, every second we see, hear, smell, taste, touch is in here. So this is the point of the debates, the two truths. And what is really true is out of what we experience in here, that seems like out there, what's really out there. And of course, if people are debating with each other, some people say, oh no, there's a tree there, there's a tree. That's the way we experience it, but there is a tree. And other people say, we'll never know. We've only got 1,000 people's experience of that tree, but what the tree actually is.
Ken, it's interesting what you're saying about the eye, how the eye is. The eyes are more or less like mechanical, and when I had a stroke which affected my vision, it affected my peripheral vision, so that I lost left peripheral vision. But what my mind done was, and Drupal Rinpoche, I described it to him, he understood it very well. What my mind done was created visual objects. So people walking through the room and things like that, and images and things. And obviously, it wasn't my eyes doing that, because that was broken, So where were these images coming from? Couldn't come from anywhere else except, the mind.
Yeah. So
and I was actually seeing things, there were, and people, they weren't speaking, but they would walk about and just appear in front of me and walk by and things like that. The irony is, it's called, that condition is called Charles Bonny syndrome.
no.
Bonny Prince Charles. Somebody was having a joke.
Yeah.
But so that was like the tinnitus that Roz was talking about. I found that with this experience of this was quite sorry for the pun, quite eye-opening.
Yeah. I get something called optical migraines, where the whole world goes psychedelic for about 20 minutes. It's incredibly vivid, flashing lights, colors, patterns. It's the brain, but it's like I'm in a world of fireworks. You're walking through a psychedelic world. You can't do too much when they're quite strong, because they take up more of the visual field, the fireworks and the things that are happening, than what you need to see. You can't drive if you've got one of those, but it's so clear that it's happening in your head. But it really is. Out of these conversations we've had this morning, they're good because they highlight one of the points of today's teaching, with the undeniable part. Nobody's saying that, denying that, for instance, Charlie, you see people, Roz, you hear the sounds. Nobody's denying that. We're not talking about that. It's about what's really there. And once we realize that we're in this 5-sense submarine, with a camera and with a microphone and with other sensorial devices, and that the whole thing's going on in our brain, which has so many filters, and is filtering every second of message that comes in and choosing, will I listen, will I look, will I think, and all of that. Once we realize that world, then this doesn't just become philosophers, debating. This school thinks this is real, that school thinks that is real. Who cares? They were hundreds of years ago, and it's just humans talking blah, blah, blah with each other. But then it becomes quite vivid. What the hell is going on? Where does all this come from? And it's quite fascinating. It really becomes very meaningful. Okay, is that us for today? It feels like we came to the end. So see you in 2 weeks' time now, and see some of you next weekend if you're in the Tonglen training program. So be well.
Thank you, Ken.
Go
Thank
well.
you.
Ken, thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Hello and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Hello and goodbye to those I didn't say hello and goodbye to at the beginning.